Sabah al Khair, which means good day to all of you from the middle of Morocco. Today I am at the Roman site of Volubilis, and I will bet you that you didn't know, or maybe you just haven't thought about, the idea that there are Roman sites even in Morocco. So if you remember your Roman history, and I bet you do, let's just go back in time a little bit. You know that the city of Rome, founded in the 700s BC, lasted until 330 more or less AD, 400s, when the barbarian invasion started. In that time, however, especially around the time of Augustus, so around the year, let's say, 0, the Romans started to expand beyond Rome and out into the Mediterranean, conquering lands all around the Mediterranean and establishing cities all over the place to service the city of Rome. Now, you've heard me talk about Sicily before and how that was an important outpost because it was a place that they could transit through as they brought their goods to the city of Rome. Well, Morocco was an important place similar to Egypt. Egypt, I might have mentioned before, was the breadbasket of ancient Rome. That's where they got their wheat, so that was transported from Egypt. And really, you kind of think about it, if the Romans were like the logistics masters of the ancient past. So here in Volubilis, they had one very important ingredient, and that is olive oil. Now, of course, Italy produces olive oil, but here in the center of Morocco, this is a fantastic area. They can grow very large olives, and they can make a huge production. So a city was built here, primarily for the Romans at least, for the olive oil trade. However, a city had been here before that. This was an original city of the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians, of course, were the ancient Phoenicians who settled in the north of Africa and settled the city of Carthage and became the great enemies of ancient Rome during the Punic Wars. So that's prior, we're talking BC, we're talking before the era of Julius Caesar. We have the Punic Wars. Once they were discarded and they were scrubbed out of history, the Romans went and took over all of their cities and established their own Roman rule. So that's why when we walk around this site, the site looks a little different maybe than what you're used to seeing in Italy, if you've been to Italy to see Roman sites, because the buildings here are, I don't know if crude is the right way, but more primitive, I guess you could say, in a sense, even if they're later in age than what you see in central Rome. Now, with Rome, we have this sort of steep curve, bell curve, in terms of the fineness of the architecture. In the very beginning, it's kind of so-so. It peaks with the time of Augustus, which is around, let's say, 0, just as an easy number to remember. And then it starts to kind of level off, peaks again with Hadrian, and then it starts to decline. By the time of Constantine in the 300s, architecture had gotten pretty crude. And things were not as fine as they had been in the past. This city was established by the emperor, not established, sorry, but was built up by this emperor who we are dedicating this march to, the Emperor Trajan, who you've heard of before. So that in the 100s AD, that's when they really started to build what we have of the Roman city here. And later on, what we have is the city built up by another emperor who you've probably heard of, which is Caracalla. Now, one of the things to know about Roman emperors, they weren't all from Rome. They weren't all what we would think of as Latin or Italian people. Some of them were from North Africa. I mean, if you have a big enough empire, and it sort of was almost a meritocracy. It was, of course, at the beginning, a hereditary emperorship, I guess you could say. But then as time went on, it was really the generals that later became emperors. I mean, that's exactly how Julius Caesar came to power. He was not a noble. So later families that are going to come to the throne in Rome are actually going to be, in some cases, from Africa. The problem with that is that because they're not noble Romans, they need to do something to impress the people, to make sure that the Roman people understand that they are worthy of respect. So one of the great families that you can immediately think of as being one that needed to impress the Romans were the Flavians. They're the ones who built the Colosseum. So the family of Caracalla comes to power, and he does need to impress the Romans because he's not from Rome. So how do you get their respect? Well, you build a big public work, and that's why you know about the Baths of Caracalla, which are one of the largest bath complexes in all of the city of Rome. They still exist, and they're really magnificent. So this is the city of Caracalla, where I am here, kind of central Morocco, and again, the name is Volubilis. So let's just take a little stroll around. You can see it's not built of marble. There are marble features, of course, but a lot of it is sandstone. They use what they've got available. We have a marvelous guide who named Majid, who I will try to catch up with in a few minutes. You can already see that there are some things here that look very familiar. These are for grinding wheat. If you've been to Pompeii, you've seen those before. That was the main shopping street back there, and that entryway is the entryway to a Roman home, a fine Roman home. And then up ahead here, we're going to walk to the Roman Forum area. What's nice about ancient Roman cities is once you get a feel for them, then you understand them. I think a lot about my professor in college, Astra Zarina. She always used the phrase, read the city. And it really is a marvelous idea, because once you understand that cities are like a book, architecture is like a book. Once you understand what the different parts do, what they mean, you can identify them everywhere. Here is one example. You see a hole, and then you see a track, basically. This is something that I can easily read because it's at the entrance of a building, and this is where they would have had doors, usually folding doors that would have been on a pin that would have gone down here and then folded up, and they were wooden doors. And for years I couldn't visualize that, but then I thought about an apartment I lived in once in college that had bifold doors, those cheap bifold doors. That's what I'm talking about. The Romans invented bifold doors. And we know that because we actually saw them at the excavations in Pompeii. There's a villa there that they got a concrete cast of that very thing. So once you understand it, it just makes an awful lot of sense, and it's very easy to read everything else. So here we are in the Forum area. And remember, the Forum was sort of the meeting area. This is where people would come to make speeches. This is where you would do business. Usually steps around the edges where people could sit and gather. And then a basilica in the middle. And this is usually where they did business or law-related activities. Majid showed us this really fun detail over here. There is an actual, somewhat functioning clock. There you go. Sundial, an ancient Roman clock. There you go. Okay, so now we're going to just take a quick lap through the area in front of the temple, and then I'm going to take you over to show you what I think is the most interesting bit. But this is such a gorgeous area here. I know that Morocco in your mind is the Sahara Desert, most likely. But here, we're in a very green area that's full of olive trees and pines, and it's mountainous area. It's really quite lovely. And this site is really surprising. You know, I spend a lot of time in Roman sites because this is really my passion, but this one it's impressive just how much is here. So we have a temple here. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he said it was Jupiter. So, but in front we always have our altar. Now, you and I, if we had been here in ancient Roman times, would never have gone inside here. We would have gone here, and we would have brought something with us, maybe a votive statue, food, something like that, to leave for whatever god was being worshipped in there. The priests would come out and they would gather those things. If it was meat or something like that, or food, they would sacrifice that food, meaning the people in the town would eat. Up there on the top of the column, you can see a pelican nest. And apparently they have nested here for a long time. Every time I've been here, it seems like there's some bird at home. But our guide Majid said that there are pelicans that live sometimes in France. So they transit like snowbirds. So we're going to head down this way. I'm not going to take you to the brothel, but there is one. Of course there is. There are also some nice mosaics. This is about the same time period, a little bit slightly before the Villa del Casale in Sicily. So what's interesting is when you see the mosaics here, you would think, well, if they're a little bit earlier, they're probably going to be nicer, but they're not. That's because this was the provinces. This was not the place that wealthy, powerful people wanted to live. They wanted to be closer to Rome, which makes absolute sense. This was the boonies. So this was the place that people lived that were a little bit distant from the heart of the empire, and therefore the architecture is a little bit more crude. The mosaics are a little bit more crude, but absolutely beautiful nonetheless. So let's pop around through these houses here. You can see not a significant number of people visiting today. We are some of the only people here. Volubilis is not a super visited site. Nothing like Pompeii, for example. But for Morocco, it is a pretty popular stop. This is in between Chefchaouen and Meknes and Fes. We're going to be in Fes for the night tonight. Figs that are trying to grow their way through the ruins. And then, this is what I wanted to show you over here. Oh, look at the little kiddo. So this is a fancy house, okay? So one of the fun things that our guide pointed out to us was that right next to the fancy house was a restroom, which I've shown you restrooms before. Hello. Hello. So here you go. Here's some of the mosaics. Beautiful colors. The geometrics are lovely. The figurative mosaics are a little bit more crude, but this is very similar to what you'd see at Ostia. So these are multicolor here, and they're lovely. They're just a little, like a step below the Villa del Casale. But over here, as usual, we have our latrines. We've got our toilets. And you already know, because you've seen these before, there would have been a bench on top, and multiple people could have used it at the same time. And there would have been water that would have come in probably from this direction here and gone around this way to flush out the toilet water. But the fun detail was our guide showed us this little pot right here, which he said was useful because the dining room was right there. And people in the Roman times, after they would eat too much, would come here and throw up here to empty their stomachs so they could keep eating. Did you know that that's a thing? And in fact, there are, in Italy, groups that recreate these funny dinners where they lay down in the triclinium, recreated triclinium, they eat all day until they can't eat anymore, they throw up, and they keep eating for 24 hours. So this was a very popular thing to do during the Roman times. But here's the thing I thought was quite unique here. So I told you that, and you can see that olives were a big production here for the Romans, as they are today. And actually Moroccans make very good olive oil. But that was what this villa, this palace, whoever lived here was in the olive oil business, because if we come over here, we can see that this was the olive press. So this is where they would grind the olives. It's different, if you can tell, the shape is different from what you might have seen for the ones that grind the wheat. But this is where they would press the olives. And they would also bring that up here. And you can see the channels in the ground. So what Majid told us was that when they would press the olives here, the oil would go into the tracks there, into these grooves on the ground. And the best olive oil would go into the small tub here. The next press, which was the lesser quality, would go in here. Can you imagine how much olive oil that was? So this was an olive oil press, and look at all the tracks in the ground. So I'm sure all of these lines had some sort of something attached to them, some sort of machinery. Look at this one here. We've got another track that goes down here. So there must have been another vat down there, or perhaps that's where they filled amphora. So now when you go to Rome and you see that they have billions and billions of amphorae, which are those clay pots that kind of have a point at the bottom, you can understand why they have so many. And that's because olive oil was imported. So they would take those clay pots, the amphorae, they would fill those up with olive oil from Morocco. The point was important because when they would put them into a Roman ship, the bottom would be loaded with sand, and they would put those points in, and that would keep them upright. And then they would ship it off to Rome. At a certain point, the Romans either couldn't use the amphora, or they didn't need so many, so they would break them up and throw them away. But they always threw them in the same place. And that's why there's a neighborhood in Rome called called Testaccio. And there's a mountain there, Monte Testaccio, composed almost entirely of broken Roman amphora that probably carried olive oil, possibly from Volubilis. So next time you go to Rome, you can take a little break in Testaccio and get the feeling of being in Morocco. So one last little detail here. You've seen this before. The tracks. This is always a fun thing to look for any time you're in a Roman city, because these are the ruts from the wagons that they would use. And you can imagine probably the wagons that they used here were transporting olive oil. This is not close to the sea though, so they had to transport them quite a ways, but you know, if you have to go a little bit of a distance to get extra good quality olive oil, then it's worth it. So let's keep walking a little bit. I'm going to catch up with my group, and hopefully if he's still there, I'll get to introduce you to our local guide, who is really excellent. I'll see if I can get his contact information for you if you happen to be coming in this direction. So, by the way, for those of you who haven't been to Morocco, it is really a great destination, and I know it looks extremely exotic. It looks a little bit intimidating, but for a North African country, it's probably the easiest. They have wonderful infrastructure, including basically a TGV. They've got their own really excellent train system. You can rent a car here, you can drive around, you can take a tour. There's lots of good options for visiting, and really, Chefchaouen is a nice start, but I feel the tour starts today, because Volubilis, Fes, this is really, for me, one of my favorite parts. So down here, you can see the more olive trees, and that down there is the ticket office and museum. So I'm going to take you down there. And this is kind of what I was mentioning about the infrastructure here. It is surprisingly nice infrastructure. They do a really good job. There's clean bathrooms everywhere, nice roads to drive on. So my hat is off to the Moroccan government, because their infrastructure has really, really improved in the last 20 years. It's pretty amazing. So more of ancient Rome. So this city basically started to fall apart at the end of the Roman Empire. So that would have been in the 300s AD. So a lot of that grand architecture would have been in use for a relatively short amount of time, maybe 200 years. And then it sort of fell into anonymity. It was inhabited by other people after that, but the grand time for this site would have been between 100 and 200 AD. So this is a project for you, if you're interested in Roman history, to start to kind of line up visits, if you can, to unusual Roman sites, places that we don't associate. I know you don't associate Morocco with the Romans. Tunisia, in fact, has wonderful artifacts from the Carthaginians, sort of, also Rome, but Libya, unfortunately, we can't really travel there, has some of the best Roman artifacts that you're going to find. A lot of them because they were not excavated until recently, and they were not poached. So, for example, the mosaics are here because nobody came and stole them. So here is their small museum and capitals. Beautifully displayed. It's really nice how they've taken the different kinds of capitals. You can tell the art style is extremely different than what you find in classical Roman sculpture and architecture. We've got altars. These are altars upon which things would have been sacrificed. And then the exit up ahead. So I'm going to go catch up with my group here. It's a really nice warm day here today. I know a lot of people would wonder about that. October is a great time to visit Morocco. It's about 80 today. I wouldn't want to go any earlier in the year. Into November is probably for the best. So here I'd like to introduce you to our guide, Majid. So Majid, You did an excellent tour for us.
It was my pleasure.
So tell me, why do you love guiding here? What is your passion for Roman history?
Of course, I like the nature. I like to walk in the open area. I will tell you a secret.
Okay.
You will not anymore.
Okay.
I work in insurance.
You work in insurance?
Yes, and I passed later my exam to be as a fishing guide, and I think it was the good choice.
I think so too. You are very good at it.
It was a good choice, I think, and especially meeting people like you from all over the world. So it's like I make trip every day to our country.
Ah, yeah, it is. It's true.
Yeah.
So if people would like to have you guide them here, is there a way they can contact you?
Sometimes yes, we still friends after the trip. We are friends.
Yeah.
We contact each other.
Okay. Well, send me your email and I'll share that with everybody watching today. Okay?
course, yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Majid. So thank you
My
so much.
pleasure, too.
I've learned
Wonderful
interesting
you.
things from you today. So,
And wishing all the best.
well, thank you so much, everybody, for
best
watching.
in your-
And hello from Volubilis. As I said,
Goodbye.
this is Majid, who is an
Please
excellent tour
welcome
guide.
to Volubilis, especially with Sarah. She's really professional and generous. So try to come with here.